Imagine walking into a restaurant thinking you're about to enjoy a peaceful meal, but instead you're met with shock, disbelief, and outrage. What happens next will leave you speechless. This isn't just any story. This is the true account of a black veteran who, after serving his country, was refused service by a waitress simply because of the color of his skin. But the story doesn't end there. What followed was even more shocking and unsettling. In this video, you'll learn exactly what happened when this veteran stood up against the blatant racism he faced. You'll hear the hidden details that were left out of mainstream reports and discover how the world reacted to this incident that sparked outrage across the nation. Stay with us till the end, because the outcome is something you absolutely won't expect, and it might just change how you see everyday interactions in this country. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear will not only shock you, but it will make you question what really happens when the truth comes to light. It was a typical afternoon at a small diner, the kind that seems to exist on every corner. The air was filled with the hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware against plates, and the sizzling sound of food being cooked in the kitchen. People were sitting at booths chatting with friends or quietly eating their meals. The vibe was relaxed, almost ordinary, with nothing to suggest that anything out of the ordinary was about to unfold. And then the door opened. A man in his mid-40s walked in. He was dressed casually in a worn t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. His demeanor was calm, his posture straight, and his expression neutral but confident. He didn't seem out of place. He was just another diner customer looking for a meal. As he made his way toward an empty table, he passed by several patrons who barely gave him a second glance. The waitress busy behind the counter didn't notice him at first, but as soon as he sat down, things began to shift. The veteran's presence, quiet yet steady, would soon be met with a response that no one in the restaurant could have predicted. As the veteran settled into his seat, the waitress finally noticed him. She paused her eye, scanning him with an unmistakable coldness, and without a word, she walked up to his table. The veteran hadn't even opened the menu when she spoke. Her tone was sharp, almost dismissive. "I'm afraid we don't serve you here," she said flatly, her eyes never leaving his face. The words hit him like a slap. For a moment, he just stared, trying to process what had just happened. He asked, "What do you mean? I'm just here for a meal." That's when the situation took an ugly turn. The waitress's sneer grew wider, and she took a step closer. "We don't serve your kind here," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. The veteran's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. He had expected rudeness, maybe even a little impatience, but this was outright disrespect. For a moment, the veteran stood frozen, his mind racing. The words echoed in his head, too absurd to be real. He had served his country, fought for the very freedoms that everyone took for granted, and here he was being told he wasn't welcome because of the color of his skin. Shock and disbelief clouded his face, but there was no anger in his eyes. He didn't yell, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he took a slow breath, his calm demeanor never wavering. "Why?" he asked again, his voice steady. But this time, there was a hint of confusion, as if trying to make sense of the situation. Around him, the other diners had started to take notice. A few turned their heads, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Some murmured among themselves, unsure of what to do. One woman near the back shook her head in disbelief, but no one spoke up. The veteran, sensing the silence in the room, didn't let the tension break him. Instead, he took a deep breath and pulled out his phone, his fingers moving quickly as he began recording the entire encounter. It was clear now he wasn't going to let this pass without a record. As the tension in the diner simmered, the veteran remained calm, his eyes locked on the waitress. With a steady hand, he pulled out his phone, his fingers moving swiftly across the screen. The sound of the camera clicking on was subtle, but in the quiet diner, it felt like the calm before a storm. Without missing a beat, he started recording. The waitress, still standing there with a look of disdain, didn't notice at first. But when she realized he was filming, her expression shifted. The smirk disappeared, replaced by annoyance, but the veteran didn't flinch. He kept recording, capturing every word, every moment. That's when the manager was called. A middle-aged man hurried over to the table, looking confused and a little flustered. He asked what was going on, but before the veteran could explain, the waitress blurted out her version of events. The manager, visibly uncomfortable, glanced at the veteran, but made no immediate effort to apologize. Meanwhile, customers were beginning to speak up. One woman who had been watching from the corner stood up and walked over to the table. She quietly told the manager that what had just happened was unacceptable. The air in the diner felt heavy as more people started to side with the veteran. The veteran, still holding the phone, calmly explained, "I'm just trying to eat. But this is about more than just me." His words were quiet, but they carried weight. Within hours, the video was shared online. Social media exploded. The veteran's calm yet firm response, coupled with the waitress's blatant disrespect, sent shockwaves through the internet. Hashtags like #JusticeForVeteran and #StandAgainstRacism began trending. People across the country were outraged, some horrified, others in disbelief. Support poured in from every corner, and the diner quickly became the center of a storm of attention. But there was more to come. What happened next would shock everyone even further. But the story didn't end there. The video, which had already gone viral, caught the attention of not only the public, but also the restaurant's management. The pressure on the business grew by the minute. Faced with mounting outrage and calls for accountability, the restaurant was forced to act. At first, they issued a statement apologizing for the incident, claiming that the waitress's behavior didn't represent their values. But people weren't satisfied with just words. The online backlash intensified, and it was clear that this wasn't going to be swept under the rug. But that wasn't the only twist. The veteran, now a symbol of resilience in the face of racial injustice, began to receive support from unexpected places. Legal teams started reaching out, offering to represent him for free. It seemed that what started as a personal confrontation had become a much larger fight for justice. Soon after, a group of activists and community leaders rallied together, organizing protests outside the restaurant. Signs with slogans like "Justice for the Veteran" and "Racism has no place here" lined the streets. News outlets picked up the story, and it quickly became a national topic. The situation was now far beyond the walls of that diner. This was a movement. The pressure was relentless, and the restaurant could no longer ignore the fallout. A few days later, the waitress was reportedly fired, but for many, it wasn't enough. The damage to the restaurant's reputation had already been done, and some questioned whether any action could truly make up for the humiliation the veteran had faced. As the protests continued and the videos spread, it became clear that this wasn't just about one incident. It was a turning point for many in the fight against racism. And the consequences for those involved, they were just beginning to unfold. This incident was more than just one act of disrespect. It was a stark reminder of the deep-seated issues of racism that still plague our society today. A man who had served his country with honor, only to be humiliated and dismissed based on the color of his skin, represents a painful reality that too many people continue to face. But what happened next was a turning point, a moment when people chose to speak out, to stand together, and demand change. The powerful reaction from the community, the legal push for justice, and the widespread support online showed that we're not willing to let these injustices slide any longer. This story may have started in a small diner, but it became a catalyst for a much larger conversation. What can we learn from this? That when we see something wrong, it's up to us to speak up. If you found this story as shocking as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll keep bringing you important stories, and together we can make sure these voices are heard.